It's about a 2-hour drive from Omaha to Newman Grove, through towns familiar only as the hometowns of Husker walk-ons, off the main highway, straddling the border of Madison and Platte counties, stands Newman Grove, population a little over 700 people. Main Street is more vibrant than most small towns in Nebraska, and across from the town grocery store and next to the bank stands the City Cafe, a place for friends and family, for talk of rain gauges, the price of beans and corn, a home base for the Newman Grove community, operated continuously for 90 years. So today we take a trip to Newman Grove and talk to Dawn and Adam Witchell, their journey from life as a big city couple to operating a small town cafe and other points in between.
So I came to know about the cafe, I think on Twitter.
Probably.
And, your guys' social media presence is pretty great, and you have
We aren't quite Wendy's level.
Not Wendy's.
No,
and you got quite the fan base in Omaha. I'm trying to get more of them to come up. So how did that start? Was it just something for fun?
We started a Facebook account and we started a Twitter account when we first moved up here. And instantly the Facebook account kind of blew up because everyone that was either local here or had ties up here, they wanted to follow the cafe. They wanted to see where this is going to go.
and a lot of parents and grandparents, Facebook is their daily.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks that follow us that on that page that aren't even, don't even live here anymore, haven't lived here for 50 years, but, they still want to see what's going on, in the hometown.
Sometimes like birthday coffees, which is a whole nother thing that I didn't know existed before. So like we'll post pictures of the birthday coffees, or Mike Nelson was driving around his 29 Roadster yesterday, so he's the one that we always tag the picture of as the Uber Eats.
Yeah,
right.
Our Uber driver. That's Mike.
We'll post pictures besides the cafe stuff around town, so people kind of can get nostalgic about it, or people will kind of see the inner workings, I guess, of a small town. And then,
kind of our brand, right?
I
Gotta
think,
stay on
I
brand.
think,
That's right, gotta stay on brand.
I think the one thing with social media is if you're not consistent with it, people stop paying attention to you.
Sure.
And so I'm always trying to stay consistent with it on a daily basis, whether it's the board, the menu board, or some little pun or some sort of little picture, whatever it is. There's people that their eyeballs still see it, and
I love it. I mean, honestly, I wake up every morning and I get on my Instagram and I see what you guys are doing every day. Every day.
It works because he's up at like 4 a.m. and so he's posting it all first thing.
It's funny because Twitter, we had 20 followers for the longest time, and then I actually engaged on it. I really didn't do anything other than post the menu board, and I would start. I would in your feed you'd start finding people that would have a conversation about food, or you'd be able to.
It started with Ol C.
Yeah, well,
Ol Cray.
Yeah.
You try and tie that into to someone's thread there.
I think that's how I found you.
Yeah.
Because you follow Ol Craig?
Yeah, and he retweeted something of yours. Yeah.
You just keep putting stuff out there, and people start to follow, and then the next thing you know, there's someone that they follow is following you, and it just kind
Next
of
thing you know, you got 6 state
snowballs.
troopers here.
Yeah.
I
next
just
thing
happened to
and
tag
then-
it, the state patrol in something, and 6 months later they all came in here for lunch one day, and it was intentional, because we had tagged them in it.
They had a meeting in Norfolk,
They had a meeting
and they
in Norfolk,
all
and they came
down.
down here.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Next thing you know, Joe and I are in here,
Yeah.
and my son is making curly
Curlicues, right?
Yeah.
Well, like curlicues. So I think it's one of those ways that we try to engage people. Also, we can recognize that, it's a small town cafe, but also if you don't live here, the quirkiness you might miss, and so we try to share that. So the people that sit at the 3 tables, we always joke that there's no extra charge for the show because we will sing along and we'll oh, do you want to refill? And we'll just holler at them back and forth, and it's like they're part of the kitchen.
That's where the morning coffee crowd sits too, and so you can kind of overhear some of those guys' conversations and
rain gauges.
Yeah, rain gauges. Some stuff you kind of want to block out, but then
That's when
stuff,
we put on the hood
some
fan
stuff
to block it out.
it's kind of funny to listen to them, and every place has that, whether it's Village Inn or Casey's or the mom and pop diner down the street from you,
Sure.
They all have that crowd.
That's true.
But yeah, I think I try to stay consistent. Or we stay consistent with social media, because how many pages do you come across that nothing's been posted or tweeted about, 2 or 3 years, and
Or more.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
so
I think also it's one of those things our marketing budget, as you can imagine, is about
It's $10, you know.
yeah,
so.
it's the yearbook ads, okay, and so I mean that's a way that we've been able to kind of get our message out without expense.
Why did a big city couple decide to operate a small town cafe?
I think the big city couple wanted to do some sort of a mom and pop kind of a small business thing. I think long ago when we got married, that's one thing we talked about doing, and the cafe part just kind of randomly showed up.
I think he's right in that we had talked about kind of having our own business, and at no point did we think it would be a cafe. We talked about a lot of different options, some really off the wall things, but we kind of figured out like what our priorities were and what we really wanted to achieve, and how we were going to get there has changed, but the end result is still what we wanted.
So let's take a step back. The big city part. So you guys grew up in Omaha, right?
Yeah, we're generously calling it a big city.
Well, I mean,
compared to Newman Grove.
Compared
that's
to
a huge
Newman
city.
Grove,
That's-
it is.
Boom in Newman, yeah.
So where in Omaha did you guys grow up?
I grew up kind of outside the Florence area, Miller Park, Minnelusa area up north.
Yeah, and I was like Benson, Keystone, Northwest-ish area,
Sure.
Crown Point, yeah.
Where'd you guys meet?
High school,
Art class, pottery class.
pottery class.
Pottery class.
Seventh hour.
At Omaha North, right?
Yes.
Yeah, go Vikings. Yeah. I graduated in 97, and
Okay,
so
did I. Graduated in 97 as well.
what's up? Right. And Adam was a junior, so he was 98. And so I graduated, it was my senior year, and we were talking in pottery class, and prom was coming up, and like we always kind of like had this like kind of flirty banter, but nothing, high school level.
Sure.
And I knew that he was probably going to ask me to prom. This is totally off track. So
No, this is great.
This is how I ended up here. So I knew he was going to ask me, and I knew I was going to Indiana for school. And so 12 hours away, I didn't want any ties, clean break. And so I didn't want to like lead him on. I mean, he was a nice guy, but I wasn't looking for anyone. And so I asked a friend of ours that was also in the pottery class. I was like, hey, I think Adam's going to ask me to prom, but I don't want to tell him no just because I have to tell him no. Why don't you ask me, and then I can tell him, hey, I've already got a date.
So you were letting him down easy by setting yourself up with someone else.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because, it was easier, like, clearly friends, right? All right, so, however, the friend that I had to ask me worked with him at Pizza Hut. So it was a little awkward, because then, sure enough, like, we went to a movie. We went to, was it Q Cinema 9?
Oh,
Yeah.
no longer there.
Yeah, no longer there.
That was my go-to theater back in the day.
Yeah, it wasn't bad,
Yeah.
small crowds. So we went there, and sure enough, he'd pulled up his little truck, and he was like, hey, and he asked me to prom awkwardly. And I go, oh, actually, I'm already going with Derek. And he's like, oh, okay. And and he took
deflated.
I know. So I've made up for it since. So I didn't go to prom with him, but I did commit the rest of my life with him. So that, kind of says something.
I think you got the better end of that deal.
Yeah, it came out on top.
Yeah, who had the last laugh,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So so then I went to school.
Did you actually
and
go to prom?
I went to prom, but I don't think you went your junior year, did you?
No, I didn't.
Too heartbroken.
Yeah, I stayed at home and cried.
Yeah. So then I went to school. He wrote me letters, and like legit handwritten letters, which is crazy, and I still have them. But so we just kind of kept in contact, I guess. And then I did a study abroad thing, and then I came back super poor. And so I was taking a semester off the following spring, and he was, well, that's kind of when we met up, and then we started dating. But you can explain where you went from there.
I graduated high school and kind of did the some college thing, but I never finished. And then just started working various jobs, and she kind of came home, and we just started kind of chatting and kind of got together.
He spit some game. That's what happened.
Yeah, it won.
You've been practicing all of it while she was gone, just kind of like working.
Right.
I know from when we talked before, you guys ended up at Boys Town. right? Family teachers at Boys Town?
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, this is Dawn could probably explain this a little better. She kind of started it. She was working with a gal at a previous job who had been a family teacher, and just casually in conversation it came up. And so she started thinking about it and came home one night and mentioned it, and kind of was not totally sure what she was, if this is like a serious thing we're talking about, or if this is just one of those kind of crazy hair things. But then the next morning she brought it up again, and we started to look into it, and 3 or 4 months later we were on campus. So
yeah. Well, and so part of it, I was working at PayPal at the time, and so I was doing customer solutions, and so you would have to monitor like your team's calls and things. And so I was having another supervisor help me to really like hone in on this one performance. And she goes, "Oh, he's just emotionally defiant." And I said, "Emotionally defiant?" She goes, "Well, he's oppositional defiant." But I said, "Oppositional defiant? So you just like made this up? What are you talking about?" And she goes, No. And then she explained that but they had divorced, but so her and her ex-husband had been family teachers for a couple of years. And so she was familiar with, the terminology of diagnosis and things. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's crazy." Well, I got off my shift at like 11 that night, and I got home and I'm looking it up, and he was working at Frito, and so he would get up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was just lots of tag teaming, and we had like an early toddler at that point. And so I mentioned it, and he's in half asleep, like, "I have to get up in 3 hours. What are you talking about?" And I said, "What do you think about moving to Boys Town and like living with some kids? What do you think?" And he's like, "What? Go to bed." And like, that was it. So then in the morning, I was kind of digging around online again and watching their videos and all this stuff. And I'm kind of like, this actually could really be a thing. Because at that point, we did a lot of voicemail and tag team and leaving messages for each other, because like I would schedule my days off and then he would have his. And so we would work it so we never needed daycare. However, we never saw each other. There was a couple hours overlapping where we'd be in bed, but like that was it. And so our daughter, she was turning eventually 3, and so we knew that wasn't really how we wanted to. Those are the super formidable years before they head to school, for most of their day. And so we really wanted to be able to spend more time as a family unit together, and be a little more, I guess, intentional about our time together, and with her being so young. And so we looked into it, and then in the morning he goes, "Were you serious about that?" And I said, "Yeah, I was pretty serious. Are you serious?" And he's like, "Yeah, all right." So we did the first interview, and then they called us back like that afternoon for the second interview. And we're like, "Oh, okay, like, that was too quick."
It's almost a bad sign, like, "Oh, you're that desperate, huh?"
Yeah.
It went pretty
and
quick.
So what we really found out later was it's a matter of, they interview people from all across the country. And so it was just rare that we were in town and available for interviews so quickly. So they made an offer, and we both gave notices, and we had one hell of a garage sale. And we took a month off, and that was the first time since we'd been married. We both took a month, and we organized our house and just kind of started to get a routine of what that looked like, because it was so different from our day to day.
Together really quick.
Yeah, it was in the course of, it was about,
I think we applied in January.
Yeah.
And
April we signed the contract.
Had an offer in April, and in May we started their pre-service training program. And then we spent it depends on the need of the program, as far as whether they place you right away in a home, or if you're what they call a transition, where you work in different homes. And so we ended up being in transition over the summer, and then actually opened our house until October. So,
as a family parent or family teacher, what did the kids look like? What did the family look like? What was your structure? How many kids? Sounds like an odd question. How many kids did they give you?
I'll cover the basics, and then I'll let Dawn go into the nitty gritty. We had a girls' home. There's boys and girls on campus. We had a girls' home that could house up to 8, and at times we would be full and have 8. Kids come and go, and so it'd fluctuate. But you had kids all across the gamut. We'd have kids from, Westo that were having behavior problems at home. We had kids from Florida that, were in gangs. We had, kids that were in, Sioux City, Iowa that, were just being truant.
Texas.
Yeah, Texas.
Ohio.
They were all over the page. I mean,
Was there an
there was
range?
generally high school. We had a couple that were 12 and 13, but most of them were probably 14 on up. We had a few graduate while we were there with us.
The program itself, they have some younger kids placed, so it could be as young as 8, or at least it was when we were there, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
But and then up to 18, and so they have they call it a community one, which is for younger kids or for higher needs, and so 8 to 12 is kind of in a 4 youth home. And then for boys and girls, it depends on if it's a house or an apartment, the physical size of the house. So between 6 and 8 is what would be placed with you. And you can have 2 of your biological children, and then you can ask permission to have a third, which is kind of an awkward conversation. So that way, just the needs of trying to parent 3 kids plus another 8,
Sure.
and just logistics of running a large family home, and the complexities of these youth, because sometimes they would come with medication and court appointments. We would be hauling kids, all kinds of places, and Judge Shurkovich and all of them. And then, or, just if they had a check-in and they had a med change, you have to get new labels and get the med changed and get parents to sign off on permission to change meds. And then you have to talk to caseworkers, and there's CASAs, and there's, so just involving just the day-to-day of all of that. That's why it's a full-time job.
Yeah, full-time job, and
Yeah.
you're never off the clock.
No. Well, and I don't think your mind and your heart are ever off the clock. The part that, we truly, I think that was probably some of our best years were spent on campus with our girls. And even if you're away, you're still thinking, oh gosh, I really hope, this girl's going to pull it together. She's going to graduate this year. Or what's she going to do? Or, oh, she's on a home visit this weekend. I hope she can just stay strong. Or what's cleanup going to look like when she comes back a mess?
Sure.
And so even today, we still have contact with some of the girls that we had more longer term. And we get, Mother's Day, we get messages, and,
that's sweet.
and some of them have had kids. And so, you get pictures, and it's like the connections that you make are genuine. And you, at least for us, like from where we came from, we genuinely cared for the girls, and they really made, I think, a difference, especially in our daughter too, because she always called them the big girls. And
Big
so
girls.
even now she's like, she'll talk about the big girls, or we were just in Omaha last weekend, and I don't think we can go on Dodge Street without her asking to drive through campus. And so it's a beautiful campus. And so she always wants to point out everything to her younger sister who never got to live there.
Right.
This is where we lived, and this is the playground. This is Dowd Chapel. And, and she would tell her all that stuff. So it was pretty cool.
So, but it's intense,
Yes.
emotionally intense.
Very much so.
And
When they run or when they make bad choices.
sure,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that takes a toll. So, was the decision to leave Boys Town, was that a difficult decision, or was it something to where it had just taken too much and you were...
No, I would say it was a very difficult decision. We really went back and forth on that. We were in no means trying to for lack of a better term, get away from that job. It was,
That lifestyle.
That lifestyle. It's really what it is. When this opportunity in Newman Grove came up, we really did wrestle back and forth, and it took about 6 months to come up with a decision whether or not to do this or not.
Was your contract coming up?
Yeah. So time-wise, they ask that you commit at least 3 years for the first one, and then it's year to year from there. So, and they certify you. And so we had done our certification, and we did our next contract, and the next one coming up would be completing our 5th year.
Right.
And so, because we were there for 4 years. And so we were talking about it, we said, just casually, it feels like a year at Boys Town is like 2 or 3 real years. We had, in the 4 years, we had 33 girls placed with us.
Oh my goodness.
So if you keep, that's a lot of just kind of wear and tear on your emotions. And so we had, our daughter was 3 when we moved on campus. And so she was 7 at that point. So she had started kindergarten, and just the time-wise of, she was in Millard Public Schools at the time. And so we would send the big girls off to their school, and then we would drop our daughter off at kindergarten, and it's all day kindergarten. And so then we would get them back from school and then go pick her up, and then it was eat dinner and go to bed. And we didn't have that much time with just our daughter.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing if you want to think about where am I spending my time? What is my priority? But so our contract was coming up, and we had talked about it. And just the realization of preschool to kindergarten transition was kind of a shock for us. And so we're like, okay, well, if we were to move, this would be the time before she goes into junior high or something. And so just casually we had said, okay, well, let's start thinking about our exit strategy. Year 5 is a good number. We'll do another certification. We'll finish it out. And then he was on Craigslist one night. And then you can tell that story.
Yeah, we found the listing for the cafe on Craigslist of all places, right before Christmas. And
Wait, so let me say that. So were you looking specifically on Craigslist for? So you're talking. You'd worked for PayPal. You were working for Frito-Lay. You both gave that up to go to Boys Town.
Yeah.
So now you're making, like you said, an exit strategy.
Yeah.
How many different ideas were coming out at this time?
Well, did you tell him how we bought the short bus?
I did not tell them that story. We've always, since we've been married, we've always scoured the classified ads, and then, obviously when the internet became a lot more accessible with Craigslist and different listings, I was always looking to see what was out there, that opportunity that might come up. And we really weren't looking for anything specific, just looking to see. And I guess we'll back up a little bit before Newman Grove. We had kicked around the idea of setting up a food truck / concession stand kind of deal. And we happened to come across a decommissioned old school bus, a short bus for what it's worth.
That's what it's called. It's a short bus.
And so we bought it. From some very nice folks in Dundee.
Yeah.
It had been used in the upstate New York, a public school district up there. And this couple had hauled it out to Burning Man for the last 4 years. So they had kind of converted it into a half.
I didn't know people like that lived in Dundee.
Oh my gosh. They kind of converted it to a little bit of a camper, and they hauled some friends.
I gotta
out
meet
there,
these people.
Oh,
They were great.
They were really great.
I'm sure.
They put Midvale School for the Gifted on the side, like that Far Side cartoon.
Yeah, if you've ever seen the Far Side comic, yeah, it was a lot of fun to drive that for. We had that for about a year, but the thought was we would convert that, and we bought that in October or November, and we found the listing for the cafe here that December. So we ended up just using that essentially to haul our kid to kindergarten and pick her up from school, every day.
It confused her poor. At Montclair, there's already some shorter buses that are back there, and some of the other kindergartners were really confused why she got her own bus. And so we're like, me. Yeah, that was good times.
Yeah, that was a short-lived little adventure.
We've always been quirky in our car choice.
Yeah.
Sure.
Whatever.
But yeah,
it was going to be kettle corn, and we were going to do
talked about kettle corn.
everything.
We talked about doing crepes. We were all over the board. We were just throwing weird
spitballing
ideas out
stuff.
there.
Yeah.
But then you saw an ad.
I saw the ad for the cafe on Craigslist, and
now what did the ad? Do you remember what the ad specifically said?
Well, it was a turnkey business opportunity. And they only wanted $35,000 for the business. That caught my eye because it was turnkey, and it was within a reasonable number. And so then I kind of read the listing, and I showed it to her. And this is right before Christmas, and so we talked about going up, and we ended up going up about a month later in January. Just kind of not really expecting much. Just thought it'd be a fun road trip, if nothing else.
Short drive.
It's a short drive.
Short drive. Gets shorter every time you make it.
Yeah.
It does.
We came up and met with the gal that had it, and the gal that had it,
Phyllis Weitzel,
had owned it for 25 years, and she was looking to retire and spend some time with grandkids and family. And she'd been very selective as to who she was going to sell it to. She had a couple opportunities. There was talk of someone wanted to buy it to turn it into a Mexican restaurant, and someone wanted to convert it to a donut shop, and she was pretty adamant that it stayed kind of what it is, you know,
Diner cafe.
the diner cafe, the heart of the main street here. And so, you know, we had a fun visit and had a nice talk with her, and went home and kind of chatted about it a little more. And we did a family trip to Colorado that March and decided to stop by on the way in. And we kept getting questions as to what time are you coming? What day are you coming? And come to find out, they kind of had it worked out to where they were going to have a pretty good sized crowd in here to welcome us, you know, so to speak.
Kind of a customer appreciation event.
Yeah.
Make it look a lot busier than it really was.
Right.
What? No.
But we kind of foiled that because we were, you know, a couple hours behind our schedule. And so by the time
Traveling
we
with
got
little
here, it was a
kids, or-
normal crowd. So,
Meaning like 12 people.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we had a good visit with her the second time around and had lunch and got to see the town a little more. And then I think we came back up following May. Is that when we made the offer?
Mm-hmm.
And thought, we're going to do this, you know? It's not, we're not risking everything, you know, putting everything out on a limb to go try this adventure. You know, we're always kind of somewhat conservative in having, you know, like a worst case scenario plan. And this was, you know, it's pretty safe worst case scenario plan.
Calculated risk.
Calculated risk.
So what did your family think when you told them, hey, we found this listing in Craigslist, small town, Nebraska, 2 hours away, town of about 700? What'd
Yeah,
say?
they think we're crazy. They still think we're crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, they were nice to our face.
I'm sure they had conversations
Yeah,
after
yeah.
we left.
Oh, I don't know what those kids are doing. Yes, I think, as we've said before too, like we had kind of this idea. And so if you're willing to keep the end result in mind and compromise on how you get there, there's, you know, other avenues of how to reach your goals. And so we could buy a house and a restaurant and, you know, essentially support ourselves for a year just on selling our house in Omaha, you know, from proceeds. And so we're like, okay, worst case scenario, we'll go back to Omaha and get jobs, or we'll go back to family teaching. Like, you know what? We have not a lot of skin in the game. We're fine. And I think for me that, I don't know, I'm kind of the risk adverse person. And so I think that was appealing to me, that we could do this little experiment.
And if it didn't work, it backfired.
We have a plan B.
We just go back home. Yeah.
Either one of you, besides Pizza Hut, have any restaurant experience? Or?
I managed Starbucks for about 6 years. And so I can tell you all about like methylene chloride and Swiss water decaffeination methods. And we can talk all day about French presses and growing regions. And like we can have a cupping if you really want. That does not mean hullabaloo to farmers. I'm just going to head you up. All right. So they prefer it diluted and weak and over. Like, it's all right. I'll serve it how they like.
Lots of sugar, lots of cream.
Lots of creamers. Lots of creamers. And so that gave me at least some pretty good. Starbucks, I would say, empowered me because I got a fair amount of like, you know, this is your P&L, and you dig into the financials, and you work with your distributors and your you're very hands-on as a store manager, which is amazing for the size of that corporation. They also gave me a lot of really great things like 401k and stock options, bean grants, and things like that, which put us in a position that we could then take a little more chance, even pretty youngish. So I would say my time at Starbucks probably whetted my appetite for running and managing a business.
Sure.
And then, I don't know, from there, that's probably about the only food service. For when we were at Boys Town, for example, you host a big Thanksgiving. So everyone's family that's within driving distance comes in, and you have maybe a casa, or you have family members, or you can invite your own family as well. And so I'm serving Thanksgiving for 30 to 40 people anyway. And so once you are used to thinking of the logistics of, okay, I need 4 casserole pans and I need, 20 pounds of beef browned up at once. Like once you're used to thinking in those numbers, that's about what I do for a special here. That's reasonable.
So you were set to take over the cafe
In August.
in
yeah.
August. Mm-hmm. But before you took over the cafe, before August came, Phyllis passed away.
She did.
Unexpectedly.
Unexpectedly.
Yeah. They had a killer Sunday buffet. She sold out of everything, the food and everything. It was just a really good numbers that day, and they kind of started to clean up, and she was getting tired and sent the waitresses home, and she lived, just at the end of the block here. And so she went home to sit down and take a quick nap, and then she was going to come back and finish cleaning. And she never woke up from her chair. And so it's a very tight community. Just so anytime, most of town is on the volunteer fire department. And so when a page goes out, everyone knows who it is, just based on the address or on the age or description. And so everyone immediately knew that everyone knew what was going on with Phyllis. And so as a testament to her, I mean, she employed hundreds of people in those 25 years that were working here. And so
How were you guys notified?
The real estate agent, he's a local gentleman here, contacted us to see if there was any chance we could come up here sooner to take over the cafe. And so we got that phone call, and unfortunately we weren't able to, but
some people stepped in. So one of Phyllis's very good friends that had kind of helped her cook on occasion said, okay, I'll still run it for 4 days a week. So just technically, if you have a open business, it's different licensing than if it was a closed business. And so it made it easier for us to transition because it was still in operation.
And so if it hadn't stayed in operation, you would have had to have gone and
through, yes. So
new
you have to
inspections,
get fire inspection, all that
everything.
stuff.
And that would have been
just more time and hurdles. Yeah.
Sure.
And I think at that point, the town, from what I understand, some of the regulars never sat in the same seats again that they did with Phyllis. So now they sat in different seats. And so one of the waitresses that worked for Phyllis stayed on with us, Elena. And so she had just talked about how it's a little bit different now because everyone, they ordered different things or they sat different places. And it's different because Phyllis wasn't here.
right.
And so her mark has been left so many places. I mean, if it's not, the hanging on the wall or the Norwegian prayer, something. But so one of her old waitresses had also moved back and they were starting a family farm. And so she messaged us and she said, hey, do you mind if I contact some of the old waitresses and we're going to try to make like a memorial or like a bench or something, for Phyllis. And so we're like, yeah, that sounds great. We'll put it wherever you want. Like totally honor her. 25 years of your life is a lot. And so it was the next day. She goes, well, we have enough for the bench. And it was like $1,400. That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
So it's just, everyone supported Phyllis, and it was just one of those really nice things. I think people wanted to honor her in that way.
So did you, with her meaning so much to the community and that kind of outpouring?
Yeah. The shoes grew.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you finally make the move and you're here and it's your first day running the cafe, and in those first few months, did that make it that much more difficult? Because Phyllis had passed away, it's kind of a shock for everybody, and now it's different.
And we don't want to let them down.
Yeah.
Right. It did. I will say, her very good friend, Peggy, who kind of stepped in when we couldn't come up right away.
She's the one that helped cook.
She kind of helped transition with us for about a week or two. And I think the one thing that sticks with me is she just kept saying, it's yours now. You do what you want with it. You know what I mean? This is what she would want. The torch has passed. And I think that made it a little bit easier, to kind of roll with it. I felt like kind of like a blessing, I guess, from her. And it actually worked out because Peggy's daughter-in-law ended up coming back to help us and is still with us to this day.
Because she had also worked for Phyllis.
Because she had worked for Phyllis,
She had waitress
too.
for Phyllis. And then she was having her fourth kid, and she's like, I can't pay for childcare to come wait tables for you. And so then she was staying home with her kids for a few years. And then Peggy said, I'm going to watch your kids, and you're going to go work for this couple. And the phone call, because I was here when she called her, and it wasn't really a request. It was an instruction. It was, you're going to be here Tuesday at 7.
Yeah.
And that was it, which has been so fabulous because Dolores has been a really big asset. She worked with Phyllis for, about 5-6 years. And so she has a really good idea of what she had done previously. That secret pasta salad recipe that no one ever wrote down,
Right.
like she's made it. And so we could kind of tap into that resource, which was helpful.
Yeah.
We didn't want to let down kind of the legacy of Phyllis also. I mean, if she made it work for 25 years, we should be able to figure it out somehow, right? I mean, that's a lot.
To give credit to the townsfolk though, I feel like we've gotten pretty strong support from day one. And I think that made it a lot easier to kind of take that burden off and start to go with it, you know? We really didn't get a lot of, well, that's what Phyllis used to do, or, you know, that's not how things are done here. It was more of, okay, great. Well, this is, okay, we're going to do this. Okay, yeah, we'll support you. And
they've taken some crazy things. I mean, early on, I served chicken 3 times in a row, and I got a note that said, hey, you might want to lay off the chicken. We're beef growers. And you're like, okay, duly noted. No more than, right. Chicken is once a week. It can be featured. That's it. And so I get it, right?
Right.
There's been some kind of off the wall things that they've actually gone for. So, you know, the Red Hat Society, like the ladies who wear the purple and red. Okay, so we were hosting them one day. And it was going to be from a gal from town who had gone to Thailand, and she had done some big traveling. And so the presentation for Red Hats that we were hosting them was she was going to talk about her travels. So I thought for fun, I made a spicy curry Thai soup, thinking, hey, this is cool. We're going to tie it into Thailand. There's coconut milk. Like, it'll be a whole thing. But I was thinking, I made like a small, like half batch, because I'm like, no one in their 70s, right?
I didn't think it was going to sell at all.
Blew out. Like, it was gone before we even got to the lunch hour, because they all ordered it. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I guess I take it as maybe a vote of confidence in us that they're trying some of these newer things. We had avocado on a few sandwiches, and even today we have to explain what it is sometimes. Yeah. They'll call and be like, what's that avo? I mean, I'm going to give them a bad accent, but, you know, an avocado. And you're like, no, it's that green squishy thing, remember? Like in Mexican places sometimes.
I see the California burger on the chalkboard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the California burger has now been highly requested. And sometimes even not on the special menu, they ask for it. So, I mean, I feel like we're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. We still have like the down home favorites. It's a ham steak. It's a meatloaf. You know, it's that kind of stuff. Yesterday was a turkey sandwich, you know, served open face, so white bread with turkey mashed in gravy over the whole thing. And so we still do a lot of that kind of stuff. But we did a berry feta spinach salad a couple days ago. I mean, like, so there's some different stuff that we throw in there, and sometimes it really takes off. And even when you don't expect it.
So what year was it that you moved up and took over?
2014.
2014.
August of 14. Yeah.
So, you know, we're coming up on 5 years, right?
That we are.
Had a conversation, yeah.
Do you feel integrated into the community now? I mean,
I would definitely say so, yeah.
Are you Newman Grovers? Is that the denominator?
I don't know if you're ever...
Is that the denominator?
I don't know.
Are you a Newman Grover?
If you're not
Newman Grovians? I don't know.
Originally from here, I don't know that you're ever really a true Newman Grover, but I mean, I feel like we're pretty well accepted.
The question we always got was, you know, so everyone wants to meet you, right? You're the shiny new object in town. And then they'll be like, okay, and you introduce yourself and you shake hands. And then they say, who's your family? And I go, Dave and Patty, but I don't think you know them. Like, I don't understand what you're getting at. No, they meant like, where's your family from?
Small towns have this web of people that are related, and you know, it's whether it's in-laws or blood relatives or distant cousins or whatever. But I mean, even to this day, we'll find out someone's related to someone else, and we had no idea. Right. You know.
Well, that happened here. So Tom Barnes, who used to own the grocery store, so his former wife, so he's a widower. So his that was a sister-in-law. That is the sister. Like, just even here, I was like, oh, okay. Now I understand why you're sitting with them.
Where it's kind of dawning on you, like, oh, that's okay.
Right. Oh, your maiden name was Nell. Oh.
So, what's been the biggest adjustment for you guys moving to?
Well, Don will probably tell you having to drive 40 miles to go to a Target store.
It's not even a real Target, by the way. It's like a half a Target. But
now, is that Norfolk or is that Columbus?
Norfolk.
Norfolk? Am I saying that?
It's Norfolk.
Fork.
Yeah, not Norfolk. Yeah. If you ask Siri, she'll say
because there's not an R in there, but we put it there.
Well, it's the North Fork
of the Elkhorn.
But, you know, I think when they made the post office sign or something, they forgot to write it. Just like it used to be Newman's Grove.
Newman's Grove.
And then when they applied for like the plat officially to do the stuff, they knocked off the S. So Newman Grove.
Newman Grove.
It's funny because when we first moved up here, and like last night it was cool enough, we had the windows open and stuff. And I had the thought too, it's like you're camping because you have the windows open. It's pretty calm. You don't hear traffic. There's always a wind, you know, and there's big open spaces. And so it brings back to thoughts of me as a kid. Like we would take our camper out and, you know, just that kind of nice peacefulness. It's a little more simple. You're outside or you're making food or going to bed. You know, it's one of those things. And so having our own business is such a time commitment that it really forces you to simplify also. I mean, the stuff that we might have used to do, you know, go shopping or hang out with friends or whatever, it's not as much of an option up here. But because we're working our business or with our family, I think that's, you don't really notice that.
Your priorities kind of shift, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
Newman Grove is if you come to Newman Grove, you have to be
You're
you're intentionally coming to. I mean, it's not on.
Stumble across
it's
it.
not on a major highway.
It's
not. If you come to Newman Grove, you wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Newman's kind of it's kind of a unique situation. It still has the pre-K through 12 school in town, and they just passed a bond issue, so they're going to be upgrading the facility and replacing the elementary school. It has a nursing and rehab facility in town. It has a doctor clinic that's an offshoot from the hospital in Albion. I mean, it has more businesses in here that you don't necessarily think about.
Given the 700 or 800.
You know, and there's folks that commute into this town for various jobs. And so I think that helps. It probably helps us, you know, to a degree. We get a fair amount of customers out of that. The Main Street isn't, you go to some towns that are twice this size and Main Street's all but boarded up.
Absolutely.
And this town it's still got several
There's
businesses.
still some vibrancy to it.
Right.
The challenge that we keep coming to as business owners. I mean, this isn't like, yay, it's a fun hobby. This is how we feed our kids.
Right.
This is how we're going to live on retirement. I mean, this is our future. This is real for us. We have a stake in this. And so we come to, you know, it's an okay building. We have really grand visions. Behind that paneling, you can't see this lovely wood paneling, but it's a gem. There's, you know, furring strips and there's brick. There's like 3 foot more ceiling with the old tins. I mean, this could be a really cool wood floor, hanging school light kind of a vibe. But at the end of the day, what's going to put more butts in the seats? You know, how are we going to turn that into profit for us and not spend 20 years paying it off or, you know, saving for it? And so how do we grow our business? I mean, how do we bring more top line? Because there's only so many people in town. And we might, I mean, our average customer is here 4.5 times a week. That's pretty high.
Yeah.
You know, that's on a Starbucks level, right? And so we have that relationship with people.
Right.
But then, you know, you can't really raise your average ticket too much higher because they're coming 4.5 times. I mean, how much more am I pushing it? And then, so the part that we come to is how can we best support, you know, new housing in town? How can we bring more families here? Or, you know, the bed and breakfast in town. Like, how can we partner with him to ensure that these visitors that are coming in for family reunions or whatever know about us?
Right.
Because you're right, no one stumbles off the highway. We can't put a billboard out on Highway 91 and suddenly increase traffic. It's not going to work. And so sometimes I wish there was someone that could like mentor or give you the cheat sheet, you know, like, hey, here are 5 strategies you can implement, boom, 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 and for 20% growth. We don't have that.
I would imagine that you're kind of caught in a catch-22 there as well, where if you went all in, got rid of the wood paneling, brought back the tins, made it a destination where you're hoping to get people from Columbus, people from Norfolk to come into, that then you'd be alienating the 4.5 times a week people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's kind of that edge. And for right now where it's at, it's us for staffing and Dolores or a weekend waitress. That's our staff. And so we can 100% tell you exactly what our business looks like because we're here and we work it every single day. And so if we were to grow that, say we wanted to expand to evening service, or say we wanted to, grow, I don't know. Well, we jokingly talked about ice cream because we really would like a soft serve machine in this town. And so, although it's probably good for the waistline that it's Albion is the closest one. And so
They have like a dairy chef there.
It's similar. It's a mom and pop kind of
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
little
I
stand.
love
it's called Shorties, but yeah,
Dairy chef in Elkhorn's my favorite.
Yeah.
been there. Their ice cream sandwiches, yeah. Growing up, we always went to Zesto's on 30th, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so they were seasonal, and now they're year round. I mean, what can you do to change it? But in order for us to tackle that project or to really make that happen, we would need to talk about staffing. And are we willing to sacrifice? 5 to 9 p.m. is our family time.
Right.
And that's homework and dinner and baths and laundry and all that, picking rhubarb. And so are we willing to sacrifice that?
Right.
Not at this point, we aren't.
Right.
And so it is that catch-22. There are ways that we could grow it probably, but we would need to bring on more staff, or we would need to,
Sacrifice family time.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I would imagine that part of that balance in the family time is why you're here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the conversation that comes back is, okay, so if we aren't going to be together, then
Why'd
what
we
was
come
the
up
point
here?
of sacrificing to be up here?
Right.
What is
Go back to the way you guys were living before, where one of you would be here during the evening, one of you
Yeah.
would be here in the morning, and 2 ships passing in the night again.
Yeah.
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 And I think we worked out at Boys Town how to work together, because working together as a married couple
Sure.
is a whole, you could do another
I couldn't
podcast
imagine.
just on
yeah,
that.
no, I couldn't imagine.
And so sometimes our conversations are eye glances. And so, it's a lot of like, we'll discuss this later, or we just need to table this right now. And so sometimes that happens in the midst of a rush or whatever.
I'll say Boys Town that really helped. That was the opportunity I think we needed to actually do this, is being able to work together. That kind of gave us a chance to do that, because there is a lot of that nonverbal conversation you have to have, and you need to move on, that some folks can't, or have
You're
trouble
sitting at a
doing.
dinner table with 12 other people.
Yeah.
We can't start bickering about,
Right.
I thought you said you were putting that loaf of, bread in the refrigerator or whatever. Like, well, I thought you did. I didn't do it.
Right. I've heard you mention a couple of times throughout the conversation the goals that you have, that you two have as a couple. And those are goals that seem to be outside of the bounds of what job you happen to be doing, or this specific business, or they were the same goals when you were at Frito and while you were at PayPal, or when you're at Boy Center, where you're here. So what are those goals?
They've changed sometimes. That's funny, because we actually have talked about, it's been 5 years. And so we have a trip planned for just us. It's kind of a planning summit. And so, okay, let's take a moment from our daily life and reassess. All right, so 5 years in, what are we doing? What big picture, where do we want to be going? Do we want to be doing exactly like this? What do we want to shift, or that kind of thing? It's stuff like we have a kid going to college. I mean, she's going into 6th grade. Okay, so we have 6 summers left with her,
Believe me, I know.
You're counting down.
My
had-
oldest just
Yeah.
graduated this couple of weeks last week,
Yeah.
and you have no idea how fast that goes.
Yeah. And so for us, the struggle is family vacation.
Right.
So if we take a vacation, not only do we not have money coming in, we still have utilities and bills
going
and
out.
premiums. Like, everything is still going out. Our
Right.
costs are still there. We just have nothing coming in. And so, plus the cost of, travel, right? Don't try to fly anywhere. Holy cow.
Right.
And then living a little bit further from the airport, you need to plan you can't take the 7 a.m. flights.
Right.
Because you need 2 hours of travel time plus an hour to get there.
Plus an hour before your flight leaves.
Yeah.
Right. And suddenly it's 2 a.m. and you're leaving. Okay, well, that's practical with kids, right?
Right.
So we'll take a red eye to Denver. Okay. I could drive there faster. And so if this is seriously the thing that we're talking about in like 4 weeks is, okay, if we're going to be doing vacations or if we want to take 2 weeks out of the summer, like this is what we're going to do. Or do we want to do it over the Christmas? When do we intentionally close? Or because as of right now, I mean, we've taken, I think, 4 days total, and then we'll close like every now and then for holidays, or something like that. But you feel a sense of obligation that you need to serve your customers.
Right.
And if your obligation, being self-employed, I underestimated. You used to feel a sense of obligation to your employer or your manager or your boss or whoever you were reporting to. And instead, you feel that sense of obligation to your customers.
No regrets.
Coming up here?
Coming up here.
No.
No.
I don't think I would have done it any earlier.
Yeah.
Because in a weird way, like each thing led us to this path.
Your favorite thing about Newman Grove?
Oh, man. I'm going to take the easy out. I'm going to say the people. And so there are times like you'll come out, like say I get caught up and I come out to start clearing tables or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, it's like an open reception. You're like, oh, yeah. And they're sharing this story that their grandkid just did, or they're, commenting about, oh, I have some extra rhubarb. You can come pick it in my yard, or like John and his wood carving. I mean, there's things that you talk about and you connect it. And it would be easy to dismiss people as like, oh, it's kind of backwoods out in rural Nebraska. And it's funny because it's completely not. There are people that are ridiculously more savvy than you will ever recognize. Yeah. And so just really kind of checking your ego at the door that you don't know nearly what you think you know. And so we're just one more, Newman Grovian.
I'm going to go Newman Grover.
Newman Grover.
Yeah.
We'll have to
We're
put
gonna
that
have
to the
figure
judges.
that out.
Yeah.
I would probably agree with Don. It's the people,
That's why we've stayed.
Yeah,
It's
really
certainly
is.
not for the, convenience
Right.
or for, that we're making such a killing. Like
Yeah.
it's the people is why we've ended up staying. And they kind of gave us a chance, and we've had a lot of support. I think they had that little taste of the month after Phyllis had passed that they didn't have a cafe. And I think they realized that this is pretty important, and they want to make sure that they have this connection place where they can still come and have their coffee, and they can have their birthday cakes, and they can, bring their grandkids. And alumni weekend.
Right.
How many people yesterday were telling us, I worked here in high school when there were booths along the wall, and when the soda fountain was here.
Yeah.
And these are all people that are sharing their stories with us. And so it's like we're the next version.
Right.
I think a little feather in our cap is we came up here with no support system, and we have made this work for 5 years. I mean, that's a lot. And we've made some sacrifice, and I think we're, better for it. But way to go us.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, come on.
How many people do you think in town, when you guys came up from Omaha,
We're taking bets on the side.
and had never done this before, we're thinking, okay, well,
We'll give them
have-
6
Give them
months.
6 months. Maybe.
There'll be another one of these 1 year type people like Glenn and Elizabeth Christensen, who 1949 was their one and only year.
That was a rough time. That was wartime. That was tough. I'm just kidding. So it's funny because we have this conversation also, you might get a new teacher in or if it's a single young teacher and you go, woo, maybe 2 years, because they're going to move on.
Right.
I think we kind of enjoy being the underdogs.
Yeah.
Even our time at family teaching, you kind of check out the pre-service class and they come in for their tour and they eat dinner with your family to see what it's like. And then afterwards you go, they ain't going to make it. Like they ain't going to make their first certification. And so, like we did, and we made a second and we made a third and and then we came up here and we're on year 5. And so, that's all right. Keep hating on us. It's okay. Not that people do.
I don't think that anyone's
I know,
actually
right?
hating on us right now, dear. But
I'm like getting psyched up here.
Newman Grove is a special place, and Adam and Don are special people, and we're proud to tell their story. Other Points in Between is recorded, edited, and produced by Joe Evans. He pretty much does everything. I'm your host, Joel Schaefer. Our thanks once again to Adam and Don for trusting us to tell their story. Until next time, thanks for listening.